A fantastic lunch. This is always the tough one, right? So please resist the urge to nap. I promise we're going to keep this very, very engaging. If you don't know where you are in the breakaway room for Tech Talent Empowering Fintech in Africa. My name is Vumi Msweli, and I've got the pleasure of moderating this conversation. So before we kick off, I wanted to give it a little bit of context. So if you allow me to sit, a little bit of context. I think we all are very much aware about the challenges facing Africa and getting talent. I think it's probably one of the most challenging spaces that all organizations are going through. And we're going to really delve into that. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit around how do we acquire talent. There's existential threat that comes with not being able to get the right talent. And of course, the phenomena of Acqui-hire. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But before we kick off, I would like to introduce my panelists. I'd allow them to give you their names, a little bit of context about what it is that they do. Leonie, should we kick off with you?
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm Leonie Pence. I am the managing partner for AIMS International South Africa. AIMS International is a global executive search business. So we look at the top end of all talent, including tech talent. We have a media and technology practice where we share industry knowledge, what's happening in the cutting edge world of technology and talent. And I think it's fair to say that you're absolutely right, Vumi. There's a crisis coming. And guess what? The whole world is looking at Africa for talent, young people, educated people, and they want to steal our talent. So, we already started the conversation even off the panel, so that's a very important subject. I'm also the lead for sustainability internationally. So I'm very, very passionate about green HR and sustainability, inclusivity, diversity, etc.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kim.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Acqui-hire. So I'm the head of people operations at PayHippo. So we are a credit-led fintech, and we have recently launched an SME banking platform for Africa. So we've dispersed about 26,000 loans, in Nigeria alone, with a 97% collections rate. But more importantly, where culture comes into that is we like to empower our talents by leveraging opportunities on their behalf. So in the face of real economic issues and obstacles, we step in and empower our tech talent to really drive the core mission of our company, which is the growth of the economic GDP of the country. So I'm really involved in marrying the company goals with actual personal growth. When you make it feel more personal and they're aligned to it, then you can really push people to achieve their potential. And then if they eventually leave the company, they contribute back to the ecosystem, and it's that kind of cycle of growth, sustainability within the company and externally. And moving into the future, I'm really, really interested in psychometrics, really evaluating what's going on with the economy and aligning it with talent. So that's where I'm really focused, and I'm really excited to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Go ahead, Emma.
Hi, my name is Emer Costigan. The accent is Irish, and I work with Westgrow, the official trade, investment and tourism promotion agency for Cape Town and the Western Cape. So along with my colleague Azra in the front row there, we sit in the investment promotion unit, and we get to tell the story of Cape Town, Africa's tech capital. Talent is a huge part of that story, so being very clued up on what is happening in terms of our current skills landscape, but also what's in the pipeline and what programs and initiatives are underway and what we can look forward to is important too, and we kind of play a role in that in terms of connecting both private and public sector role players, because it's in all our interest to have a really flourishing talent pipeline for the province, and that is in pursuit of our overall mission, which is to grow the economy and create jobs.
Wonderful, thank you. Darren, I'll say the rose amongst the thorns, I should say the thorn amongst the roses.
I must say it's nice to be on a panel full of women rather than a manel where you just have the odd woman there. So thank you very much for inviting me up here to speak. So hi everyone, my name's Darren Franks. I'm the CEO and founder of a business called Talent in the Cloud. We work specifically in the African fintech sector, providing various different talents to different organizations, whether it be digital banks, payments companies, remittance companies, or anything of that ilk. I also wear another hat, so I'm one of the co-founders of the Fintech Association of South Africa, so intrinsically involved with Wesgrow and other government bodies here in South Africa trying to drive the message of this being a hub or one of the main global hubs for fintech. I'm just going to say something controversial, if that's okay. There isn't a shortage of talent in Africa. That's a myth, absolute myth. There's a shortage of companies that don't know how to acquire the talent. There isn't a shortage of talent.
That is the perfect segue to my first question, actually, is what is your take on the current African landscape when it comes to tech talent? A lot of research is saying we're at a crisis point. We can see already Darren saying, I think not. But I'm interested in your views. Leonie, let me kick off with you. What are your thoughts?
Look, I think, Darren, that's quite a big statement, but I think there's a disconnect often in what the recruiter, let's say inside the corporate or inside the company, thinks they need and how they should go about recruiting it, and the talent out there. Certainly, we have talented people in Africa. We know that. We see that. That's why we have so many entrepreneurs and so many people actually moving out of Africa and becoming immensely successful. So I think there is a need for HR and recruitment companies, also external recruiters, to actually understand how to recruit this talent. And I think there is a disconnect there. That this is not something that is new, but I think specifically with tech talent, it is something. Tech talent are mostly young, so we're talking about 18 to 25-year-old to 30-year-olds. These people are the new generation. They're looking for different things to what the baby boomers were looking for, and you can't have someone who doesn't understand that recruit these people. We were just talking about it, things like remote working. I back in the day, many years ago, recruited a SAP specialist for one of the big retailers, and this guy was, I work 4 days a week. It's what I do. He was one of the only people in South Africa with that very specific SAP skill, and the retailer just couldn't make the mind shift to say, well, actually, if I really want this talent and I want this person on board, he's prepared to work on an outcomes-based salary, etc., then I need to give this person the freedom to be flexible. People and tech people specifically want to be flexible. That's why so many of them live in Cape Town, right? They want to have a lifestyle. They're very focused on that. They're very focused on mental health. we just saw statistics recently to say that young people spend more money on wellness than, and again, I'm talking about under 25-year-olds, spend more money on their personal wellness. Have you seen these teenagers? They buy plants, dogs. This is the kind of thing that's important to them. So lifestyle is important. So I think there's a disconnect there often in how we recruit them.
I think that makes me so happy. This goes to our conversation we're having a little bit earlier, Kim, because I play in the wellness space across the continent. What is it looking like from your perspective? I know you guys have over 80 employees. What's on ground from your perspective?
I think I'm going to take a different approach. So we all know that the human capital is really the primary asset of every company, but we're talking about Africa, right? So I think all human beings, and I'm going to make it specific to Africa, the key goal here is self-actualization. So obviously what that means is feeling like you're exactly where you want to be or where you should be. But there's so many obstacles, and I think it stems from fear and trauma that's going to be taken away at any moment. And that's based off, it can be the history of the country, it can be the state of the currency, it can be that there are not enough companies, like you said, that are really coming out and people supporting them, which links to what PayHippo does, giving loans to SMEs, but that's not the focus point here. I think what companies need to focus on is protecting their employees. And protecting is not just like, physical day-to-day protection. It's protecting how they understand your mission of the company, protecting them in terms of, okay, what can we create to unblock the barriers that we can't escape? Okay, so Africa's GDP has grown 4% in recent years, but I'll give Nigeria as an example. We're in a second recession in 5 years. That is craziness. We have so many volatile issues in our economy, but there is so much talent to protect. There isn't a crisis in terms of the numbers. There's a crisis in terms of the impact that is out of their control. So what can companies come forward and do? And it links to what was happening on the main stage earlier about interconnectedness. How can we come together to create policies and structures? And then once we do that, we unblock barriers like, misinformed regulatory policies. We unblock barriers like fraud. We unblock barriers like, talents not having enough cushion time to go back and train and then rejoin the companies that they want to really work with. So long story short, I think the crisis point is all the macro factors that we are neglecting because we're thinking about the micro. And a lot of people are poaching people based off of that. Most of the talent that I've hired or worked with are only being poached by international competitors. And what are they offering them? Economic security, protection, longevity, all the HR insert here words that we all know that are amazing, but we can offer them that and stand against all these waves that we can't control. So I'm always thinking about the external because most of the complaints I see are things that are not really company driven. It's not so much about the culture. It's how can your culture protect me against things I don't know what to do on my own with. So that's how I would answer the crisis, yeah.
Thank you for that. Emer, I'm interested to know, right? There's this saying that says, you should fish where the fish are. And when it comes to tech talent, we've noticed that by far the largest a group of talent when it comes to tech in the fintech spaces in South Africa, specifically Cape Town. What are some of the lessons other cities and countries can learn that Cape Town's getting right that we can start including in other ecosystems?
So I'm always a bit wary of, sharing lessons for other destinations to learn from us. I think we have to kind of stay humble, recognize there's a lot of things that we can still do better on, and also look at what's happening elsewhere on the continent and what we can learn from them. So, we've been blessed with, 4 awesome universities in the Western Cape that are innovating, that are moving with the times, that are listening to what industry is looking for, and that are, I think, opening up access to their courses in a number of really interesting ways. So you've got, for example, the only fintech masters, I believe, on the continent being offered by the University of Cape Town, but they're also putting those resources and teaching materials on GitHub for anybody to access. They're running boot camps and developer weekends that students from all over the country can get involved with. They've got massive open online courses and short courses, just broadening access to that learning that's being generated, which I think is phenomenal. And they're not alone in that. Stellenbosch University is also looking at different hybrid models for shorter courses, servicing a population that may not ever be able to take the time, to go back and do a full degree at university. And not to mention something like UWC launching their Digital Innovation Hub, where they're going to have a showroom demonstrating what AR and VR can be, how it can be used in application by industry. The universities are just one part of the story. I've spent a bit of time on that, but I think it's worth kind of flagging that they're a big part of the success of the ecosystem, and they're also moving with the times and broadening access, which is important because if you listen to a platform like OfferZen, where they say most of the software developers in South Africa can be found, they talk about the fact that according to their research, 1 in 4 software developers in South Africa didn't actually do a STEM degree at university at all. So we've got to understand that our talent is coming through from a whole load of different pipelines, and I think the onus is on us as an ecosystem to make sure that there is a variety of different paths to a tech career that people can follow, and also that we're holding on to that talent within the ecosystem, that we're not losing them to other countries, other regions of the world, and that there's enough opportunity within our ecosystem. And that's a whole bunch of things, right? And that's the kind of thing that keeps government preoccupied. So, things like, are we supporting our startups sufficiently? Are we attracting foreign direct investors sufficiently so that there's, both jobs in big companies like Amazon Web Services, but also, interesting, innovative startups that offer a different career path for the talent. And that involves things like making sure there's enough VC funding coming in, which we spoke about just now in the panel earlier. So there's a whole load of things that need to happen. Basic education. I mean, I can go on for a long time about where it's got to start from the very beginning. But the other thing I think I'd like to kind of put out there for consideration, and I loved how you spoke about companies protecting their talent. But part of that is also, are companies growing their own talent? Are they looking at the talent pipeline and kind of rolling up their sleeves and getting involved further back up the chain? So not just when they have those individuals under their wing and in their employ, but are they looking at things like engaging with the universities and making them aware of what's coming down the line? What are the skills that they're going to need in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? And then also offering those opportunities, maybe to individuals that don't tick all the boxes they would normally look for? How do we grow talent in our country if we're not giving people a chance? I'm going to stop there because I could really go on a long time about this. But I think, the companies have a responsibility, and government, private sector, and us as individuals too.
That's a great question. I'm going to throw it to Darren. How do we grow talent?
Well, following on from what Emma said, I think it does start certainly in education or higher education. It also starts at high school level. I know a lot of the schools and the curriculums now include programming, which is a vital part. I think the future of tech, and I know we'll probably come on to that in a little bit, but with AI, with low code, no code programming, et cetera, I think we'll find that perhaps some of the skills that are being taught now in school, where they're saying we're readying you for the future, I'd question whether that's actually the case. They're not looking at, well, everyone needs programmers and developers now. Are they really looking forward sort of 10 years and going, actually, are we going to be in a low code or no code environment where I can, use AI and I can talk to my computer, I can tell it what to write? Okay, so I think there's a bit of disparity between some of the curriculums that are being offered. And just to answer, I suppose, your question and a point that Emma raised as well just now, I think it's difficult. If you're an early stage business and you have pressure perhaps from your investors, you have pressure from perhaps a board that you need to get things done, you need to get the product rolled out, you need to hit your objectives, you need to hit all of the metrics that are set, and then you're expected to go and hire younger people and train them up. If you don't have a great deal of funding, I know there's a company in this room, I'm not going to look in too many directions, that have had a lot of funding and have taken that on really, really well and have developed people and taken young talent. But if you're not at that level where you haven't raised, $10, $20 million, and you've raised maybe $1 million, $1 million doesn't go very far these days. So looking at taking young talent in, being able to train them up, working with people on a 12, 24-month program, perhaps with something in the back of your head that goes, are they going to be with me after 24 months? I'm going to invest all my time, my energy in developing someone, and they're probably going to jump ship to a FANG or whoever it may be, and it's going to pay them 4 or 5 times what I'm paying them. So there's definitely that challenge. How do you do it? I think if I was talking to my kids now and saying, you want to get into a career, I probably would suggest to them that they do start maybe more on the advanced companies, so people that are a slightly later stage that can offer them the training and the development that they need, and then look at maybe something a little bit more high risk a bit further down the line. But to get that core training, I think is really, really important. We're seeing quite a few graduate programs that are coming into play now. We were talking in a session a little earlier with a lady who was talking about there's actually a big talent pool here in South Africa who are developers that have been through non-STEM based education. They've come from impoverished areas, moving and want to get opportunities in the workforce. But again, the bigger companies are saying, no, you must have a degree, you must have computer science, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there are, and going back to my sort of comment when I first started, there is talent. There is talent available across the continent. This is not just a South African thing. We do a lot of work in Kenya, a lot of work in Nigeria, a lot of work in other countries as well. So I think the message is you're not alone. There are challenges. If you have the right value proposition, you have the right environment where you can attract what you're looking to attract, then you can do that. There's untapped markets. There's the youth that's untapped. There's the older generation that's untapped. We were talking in the session just before, there's a whole swathe of people who are probably in their 50s or over that actually are so passionate about development, or they're passionate about the fintech sector. All they want to do is their job, which is coding. But unfortunately, they're excluded from a lot of processes because, the general feedback is, I'm sorry, you're not a good cultural fit. Well, we all know what that means. And I think if we take away those biases and actually we look at people for the skills that they can have, and remember, these older people in the workforce, they're great to use to train the younger. Right? There's no. I don't think everyone needs to be, between the sort of age of X and Y. We talk a lot about diversity, and I think we talk about a lot of diversity when it comes to gender and it comes to race. But I think what's also important is when we talk about age diversity as well, because it makes a big difference, and that's something that doesn't often get discussed.
Yeah, definitely not. So I'm interested. So that's one strategy, right, to grow talent internally. But there's another phenomenon that's starting to happen in the fintech space, which is a new acquisition strategy, which we call Acqui-hire. In essence, it's acquiring a tech talent company and bringing tech talent in-house and keeping it exclusive. What are your thoughts on this? How's this impacting, the tech pool availability and specifically for startups? So how do you view the strategy, Leonie?
Sure, there's so much to say and little time. So let me start again by saying this is, there's always a cycle with these things, bringing things in-house and then sending it external again when people decide it becomes expensive, etc. So it's not actually new. I think it is a trend again. So it's a cycle again happening now. What I often find with tech talent is that they don't like working in one space for a very long time because then they feel they're not developing, they're not learning. So this is not necessarily going to attract and retain the tech talent long term if they work in-house like this. It also solves a problem for a while. Right now, that particular language skills, etc., is in high demand, but things change. So 10 years down the line, it needs to look different. And I find that's why people also generally who are very good developers or even architects, etc., actually prefer working independently, working on a project or a contract, unless you can offer them something to say, well, you're really going to develop here, and we are going to, and I think what Nkem was saying is very important, is that you need to align the personal purpose to the company purpose. So it comes back to culture. It comes back to what the impact is that company actually wants to make. So you can't forget about this. You can't go, these are people who we're going to just bring them in-house and they're going to be happy. And money is not necessarily the equalizer either. People really want to align with a purpose. So you need to understand what their personal motivation is. This is something that we spend a lot of time on when we recruit, is to find out what is the candidate's personal purpose, and will that actually fit in with the company's purpose? So you can't really just take a whole, people are not sheep. You can't just take a group of them and go, oh, well, you're just going to now go into that kraal and you're going to be happy there. It's actually very, very complicated and complex. And again, if the older people, let's call them the baby boomers, the people moving out who have fantastic skills to transfer, don't know how to speak the language, of technology, which I find a lot happening. So in the executives we place, they often actually do not have enough understanding of technology, of how to drive the new ERP system and work with the project teams. And this is also a problem that we really find that people in non-tech positions don't understand technology and the technology skills. So there's also work to be done there.
Definitely. And I'm interested also about the skills that are non-tech, like you just mentioned. So the World Economic Forum has let us know that some critical skills for the future are things like creativity, communication, the ability to build community. And Kim, in looking at the sort of soft skills that you're looking for in your organization, what are some of those key trends that you're seeing there?
Well, I think this also ties into future young tech talent that's looking to penetrate the market today. So what is attractive to companies? Where should I be doubling down on to really focus on? Some of the skills and trends I'm seeing go beyond, the conventional aspects of things. It's really more aligning with how to advance the company based off of where they are. So it's more operational based. It's more creativity and quantitative thinking. So it's not just learning how to be an accountant, for example, and looking at numbers and then submitting your report at the end of the day. It's looking at the nuances and seeing what it implies and what the implications are for the business, and then where your role ties in. And this can be applied to any role. It's not just tech, it's every single role. This is what we're looking for now these days. We're looking for people that link quantitative thinking to the operations of the business, and that drive that with their role. So there is no aspect in a work kind of structure that they're not looking at data in a way where you can also give your own creative input. But we're also looking at people that have experience working across diversity, working with specific challenges. I think, for example, I'll just use myself as an example. If I'm interviewing you, I'm looking for what hardships, what obstacles, how you've pushed through those barriers. I'm not looking for how you added zeros to the company balance sheet, which is great, that's amazing. But what challenges did you have when facing cross-department stakeholders? How did you prefer solutions when your CEO is telling you that's not the way to move forward? How do you present yourself, or how do you use data in a way where it's a weapon and then you're adding your creative flourish and your sprinkles on top of that? I ask really like left field questions because I'm trying to get those kinds of mindsets. I'm trying to also teach the people that I interview or work with that it's not a one-size-fits-all model, and we've really moved past that now. So long story short, the skills I look for are people that operate outside the box and that influence traditional thinking with that. So that's just the nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I can just add one thing to that, we often tend to miss the emotional maturity. And yes, we've got very smart people in this environment and very talented people. But, I'm always amazed at how people actually do not know how to, just the protocol of how to behave in business, emotional maturity, to be able to work cross-functionally across matrices, to manage upwards. And this is something that our young people, especially people from disadvantaged backgrounds, they might be extremely talented and they might be able to actually do the actual technical work. But sometimes they really struggle to fit into that environment. And we need to develop people. We need to give them the time of day and develop that. And then, of course, cultural agility, which I think is also key.
Definitely key. Thank you for that contribution, Leonie. Emaine, in a few sentences, what do you anticipate the tech talent is going to look like in 2030?
So, yeah, I think our vision as Westgrow is that Cape Town remains Africa's tech capital, but also that it's backed by this flourishing pipeline. I keep talking about the pipeline and the pool of talent being grown on a number of different levels. So, as Darren referred to, that our basic education curriculum is reflecting the skills that our ecosystem is going to need in the future, that our universities are finding ways to share their learning across a broader spectrum of people, that we've got people accessing programs which exist at the moment that overlay those digital and technical skills with a kind of work readiness training, which I think speaks to what you referred to, Leonie, that you may have the right technical skills, but you may not be ready for the workplace. And I think in a country like South Africa, that's really challenging. I mean, growing up in Ireland, I had my first paying job age 13. I worked the whole way through high school, the whole way through university. By the time I had my first full-time job, I knew how to be in the world of work. I knew what was expected of me, and it wasn't such a huge leap. And in a country with our levels of unemployment, you can't so easily push it back on the individual and say, you need to be, getting your part-time job and you need to be finding every opportunity to work and acquire those work readiness skills. The good news is there are programs here in Cape Town. We have capacity, we have, which brings disadvantaged youth into digital skills accelerator programs. Sometimes those are vendor specific and funded by corporates, and they commit to absorbing a certain number of the graduates at the end of the program, which has had phenomenal success so far, and I think will continue in that direction. DigiLink is another example of this, where major corporates in South Africa have recognizing, I guess, that the challenge that Leonie mentioned, that those corporates need help getting their new recruits or getting this talent, and in the case of DigiLink, it is previously disadvantaged youth, to a state of work readiness, but they don't have the capacity to get them there, and so they can get involved with programs like this. I think we're going to see more and more of that. I think we're going to see more different kinds of flexible learning, and I think the learning is, to repeat the cliche, it's got to be lifelong, and companies play a role in ensuring that there's learning opportunities throughout the person's career, so reskilling and upskilling, and our learning institutions have a responsibility as well to broaden that access and offer those opportunities.
I think that's definitely going to be very much part of the future. One of my favorite quotes is from a futurist who says, the illiterate of the future are not those who can't read or write. The illiterate of the future are those who have an inability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So definitely seeing that in the future. Darren, in closing, I'm interested to know from you, what is one thing we can do as people in the fintech space to really, really change how we do things internally to acquire and retain talent?
Well, we covered off, I think, quite a bit about acquisition, certainly in the last workshop, and generally in terms of being very specific and deliberate about the type of talent you're looking to attract. Retention is a whole different ballgame, right? How do you retain talent in your business? Retaining talent is it's a very broad topic. I think one of the key things that you can do, I did this workshop a few months ago in front of about 15 banks in South Africa, and we came up with these ideas, and they were like, this is brilliant, but we've got no chance of ever implementing this because we're a bank. But I think as fintechs, we have the opportunity to actually be a bit different and to be more agile. So things like benefits packages, if you're looking at your benefits packages for your employees, what a Generation Z wants versus what a baby boomer wants are completely different things, right? There's no point giving them a, sorry, I have to go out. 2 secs, I'm wrapping up. There's no point giving the same list of benefits to someone who's at the latter stage of their career versus someone who is at the early stage of their career and wants to travel and wants to go to gyms and wants wellness, et cetera, et cetera. So being quite deliberate in terms of how you structure things like benefits packages, asking the really difficult questions. And as business owners, sometimes we don't want to hear these things, but rather than saying to someone, why do you love working for us? Why do you love working here? Maybe the question to ask is, what don't you like about working here? What don't you like about the culture? What don't you like about management? What don't you like about the facility? What don't you like about the office? And having those really difficult questions, so actually you're forearmed and you can create value propositions, your employer value propositions based on those really difficult questions. So there's no one answer to fix retention. Yes, you can offer retention bonuses, is what we're seeing happening quite a lot in the market. But off the back of that, certainly with international businesses, they're coming in going, we'll just pay you out. If someone's that good, we'll just pay you out your retention. So don't worry about it. So there isn't a hard and fast rule. It's not, here's one strategy, implement it, and your retention, problems are over. It's quite a broad subject.
I like that idea of tailor-making benefits packages. I think it really would resonate with a number of people. Before we close, I'd like to open up for 1 or 2 questions. Are there any questions for our panelists? Yes, the gentleman at the back.
Thank you very much for this insightful discussion. My name is Godfrey Chama, UN Economic Commission for Africa. One of the things which we are commonly coming across is the executives not being aware or even having any understanding of the requirement of digital transformation skills, especially given the current crisis which the world has gone through. Now, from your perspective, I think this creates a window of opportunity for you to really assist in creating guidelines and getting lots of these guys who sit on the top floor to understand what is actually required, both of them and the other people. Because the countries that have recently been to, when you talk of digital transformation, they bring in an IT programmer to sit in the meeting. And the IT programmer knows absolutely nothing about digital transformation because it's a process-driven issue, which includes understanding what the business does vis-a-vis the digital opposition, automation, and so on and so forth that is involved. So what can you do to assist the industry in this regard? Because it really is going to have an impact on fintech. Everybody is, literally is going in that direction, but there is a need to get the executives to understand this. Over.
Go ahead, Darren.
Godfrey, hi. You're absolutely right. Digital transformation is more than technology, right? It's a mindset, it's a cultural shift. Obviously, we don't usually refer to digital transformation in the world of fintech as we know, but certainly on the banking side, there's a big project we're running at the moment in Kenya, and when they see digital transformation, this is going from knocking down 2 floors of their building podcast studios, building web, what do they call it? An auditorium, right? Building co-working spaces for other fintechs to come in, building sandboxes. That's digital transformation. In terms of people coming into the industry to understand or to lead those types of transformations, I think that there has been a lot of successful ones across the continent. There's been a lot of successful digital transformations. There's been a lot of unsuccessful ones as well. So really you're looking at the talent that has a proven track record at a senior level of making that change. And it's not just about putting in a new ERP system or, making a fancy app. It's way, way deeper than that. So I think the companies that have gone through digital transformation, enterprise scale, I would really look deeply at what has changed. Has the culture changed of the business? Have the whole dynamics changed? What's the value proposition? What's the business model? I think that's one of the key things for digital transformation in banking. It's a business model. This is not just about a fancy app or a bit of interesting technology. This is about actually fundamentally the business model changing of the bank. As I mentioned, the one in Kenya that we're doing a lot of work with, they've opened up a whole API layer for fintechs to come in and use their sandbox environment. And this is within a bank. And this bank's been, I think, for 150 years old. For me, that's digital transformation, not just having a nice sort of consumer-facing app.
I think that's fair to say that, in essence, that's what technology is all about, integrating every aspect of our lives. Good way for us to end our conversation. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion. I'd like to thank my fantastic panel. Thank you so much for your insights. It's greatly appreciated. My name is Vumi Msweli. It's been my absolute pleasure moderating this panel. A round of applause, please. Thank you.